Okay, well, hi Mrs. McCree.
Hello, Mr. Arnowski.
How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for giving me the time to show me how to use graphs properly.
Well, you said you wanted to linearize a graph on Excel, didn't you?
That's exactly right.
Right, well, let's see if we can show you how to do that in this film.
Fantastic.
Right. Okay, so hopefully by the end of this film, you're going to know, well, we'll review a couple of things with Excel and you'll understand what it means to linearize a graph and you'll also know how to do it.
Brilliant.
Right.
Quite a few things.
Well, yeah, it is quite a lot to cover, I suppose. First of all, I thought we might have a look at, let's say you've got some data in Excel already and you've drawn a graph.
Okay.
Maybe what some of the things you might have remembered to do there.
Okay.
So you're doing an investigation, you don't want to miss things out. Yeah.
We have used it before,
yeah.
So hopefully we can refresh that and recap what we remember. So, what have you done here? It looks like you've already done an experiment.
Yeah. So basically, these are the results of an experiment that I did, where I found a few circles.
Mm-hmm.
I measured their radius in centimeters.
Okay.
And then I took these little square centimeter things and I saw how many I could fit in the circle.
Okay.
And so I measured the area of the circle by counting how many square centimeters I could put in there.
Cool.
And then I put it in a table there. And I made sure that instead of putting centimeters into the boxes, I've just left numbers in there so that Excel can draw a graph of it later.
Oh, so you've put your units in the heading at the top?
Yeah, I put my units in the column heading, yeah. So do you remember what sort of things you might do to turn these data into a graph?
Well, at the top there's a thing that says chart, so
yeah.
I guess we have to decide which kind of chart we're going to draw.
Yeah, but before you decide that, what have you got to do? Do you remember?
No, can you remind me, please?
Okay, so just if you highlight the data that you want to draw a graph of.
Okay, not the headings.
No, that's right. Make sure you don't include the column headings.
Okay.
All right, and then 9 times out of 10, when you're doing a graph in science, you're going to want a scatter graph.
Okay.
Okay, so we're going to go up here and we're going to choose a marked scatter.
Right.
Okay.
So not a line graph.
No. And then there's your graph, and you can kind of stretch it out to be whatever size you want.
Well, that's easy. So that's my graph done.
Yeah.
Wow.
Except sometimes you're going to want to find something out from it, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Okay.
Okay.
But is that graph? Would you be happy with that graph if you just left it? Would you take that graph and just chuck it into your Word document and submit that as part of your investigation?
I think it might have some things missing. I remember we used to always have to put on the titles at the top and then label the axis. Yeah,
right. So you want a title for your graph, which tells everyone what the graph shows. So this one is showing how the area of the circle depends on its radius.
Okay.
Yeah. So often it will be the 2 variables from your table in your graph title.
Right.
And then you want to make sure that you label the axes with those things and with the units. So you just go to your chart layout and you go to the axis titles and you choose what to put in on those axes. So for example, I'm changing this one here and I want it to say, do you remember what I want this one to say? It's my independent variable. It's my x values.
That must be the radius.
Yeah. So
I just double checked that because I saw that the radius was 3 in the first reading there was 3.
Yeah, exactly. Good idea. So if you see what sort of range of values you've got here and you compare them to the ones on the axis, you haven't got anything at 1200 in that column.
No.
Yeah, so that must be your x values. So radius of circle. Just like that in centimeters. Very good. Right. Okay. Cool. So we do that, and we do that for the other axis as well, and all that kind of thing. But I guess we're kind of assuming that people know how to do that, and we're going to focus more on the linearizing today, okay?
Right.
All right?
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so basically, by the time you've finished your investigation, you might then be going, right, I'm concluding now by looking at my graph that the pattern or the relationship is so-and-so.
Yeah, okay.
And quite often a student would put something, I think there's a relationship, but I don't know what it is, I don't know what the shape is, or they'll say linear, and they'll guess something or something like that. So what we want to do here is kind of be sure about how we're going to do that. Okay?
Cool. So they can tell that as one goes up, the other goes up, but It doesn't look like a straight line to me, does it?
Yeah, exactly. If it's not a straight line, we're not going to say it's a linear relationship, and we've got to be a bit better at spotting that.
Okay, great.
Yeah. So I suppose now we're going to talk about what it means to linearize something. Okay. Now, basically, linearizing is if you've got some data in Excel that doesn't look like a straight line, it's just turning it into a straight line.
Oh, easy. Well, that word looks really complicated, but it's actually really simple.
Well, that's right. But if we're going to have a chance of doing this, actually the maths behind it is quite complicated.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So what we want is a nice simple way of sort of just spotting shapes of graphs that will mean we'll have a better chance of doing it without having to understand the complicated maths.
Oh, that sounds good to me.
Okay. Okay, so here we go. Here's our first graph shape. Okay. And it's called a linear one.
Because it's a straight line.
Right. And if you get this one, then there's no linearizing to do, because remember, linearizing is making your graph linear.
Yeah.
It's turning it into a straight line. If it's already a straight line, then leave it.
We would say it's a linear relationship.
Exactly. There's a linear relationship between the two variables. Yeah?
Easy.
But you might get something that looks a bit like that one.
Wow.
So it's kind of going down, but it's not going down in a straight line.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And that's something we call an inverse relationship.
Okay.
And that's where whatever's on the y-axis is not necessarily equal, but we'll just put an equals in here to keep it simple. Whatever's on the y-axis is related to 1 over x. So 1 divided by whatever's on the x-axis.
Okay.
Okay? Doesn't really matter too much about the maths here.
Right.
We're just spotting the shape.
Okay.
And we're going, oh, that looks inverse.
Okay. So
All right.
Shape is curving down.
Yeah.
Inverse. I'll try and remember that.
Okay. Now the next one's kind of a reflection of that, almost.
Mm-hmm.
And this is called a squared relationship. So it's going up, but it's not going up in a straight line. And what this shows us is that whatever's on y, on the y-axis, is related to x squared.
Okay.
Okay? So again, going up, but in a curve.
And a curve up?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then there's one more that we'll do. There's loads.
Right.
Right? But when you're at school doing investigations, you don't have to do every single one ever.
Good.
All right? So this is the last one we're looking at, and it's the most complicated one. It's called inverse square.
Yeah.
And it's like a combination of those two that we've just looked at. It looks just like an inverse one.
I was going to say, it looks very similar to an inverse one.
So we've got to be a little bit careful.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we might have to try both out if we get this one. We might have to try an inverse one first before we try this and see which one works best.
Right.
Okay?
Okay.
Now you might be thinking, well, try it out. What does that mean? So let's have a look now at what we're going to do on Excel to linearize the graph. Once we've had a think, oh, that shape kind of makes me think, maybe it's squared, maybe it's whatever.
Okay.
Yeah? So if you're looking at that graph there,
mm-hmm.
does that remind you of any of those shapes you've just seen?
Well, both the inverse and the inverse square went down, kind of curving.
Yeah.
So it's definitely
So this
not
one's
that.
quite curvy, isn't it?
It is curvy, but it's going up.
Right, it's going up. Okay.
So it must be the other one.
Which was?
The squared one.
Right, cool. So what we're going to do is we say, remember, the squared one said that y is related to x squared. Okay, so what we're going to do in our table of results is we're going to put in a column for x squared.
Okay.
If it was an inverse graph, we'd put a column in for y equals 1 over x, so we'd put in a 1 over x column. Let's just imagine that we thought that was inverse.
Okay.
Yeah? And we'll do what we thought we should do. Okay? So inverse, what is that relationship? Y equals?
1 over x.
1 over x. So in this column, we have 1 over x, which is 1 over what? What's on the x-axis?
Your radius.
So 1 over radius. Okay? And we want Excel to calculate what 1 over this is.
Okay.
Do you know how to do that formula?
You have to always press an equals first. Don't you,
Equals
when you
for
do
formula, yeah.
And then just 1 / and
if you want it to calculate them for you, rather than putting these numbers in, by hand, what would you do?
I would click on the box.
Okay, and then it tells you it's doing 1 over that box.
Okay.
And then it calculates it.
Right.
And then what if you didn't want to write that formula in all these cells down here?
You have to take it to the corner.
Yeah.
Till you get that black arrow, and then pull down.
Awesome.
Magic
And then it's all done, right?
Yeah.
Now, we want to check whether that's straightened our line.
Okay.
Now, it hasn't done anything to this graph, but that's because this graph is plotting those two columns.
Right.
So we want a new graph for our y values together with this new column we've just created.
Okay.
Same as before,
So
scatter. And that hasn't made it a straight line.
That looks worse.
Yeah.
So definitely we were right that it wasn't an inverse graph.
Right. So let's not pretend it was an inverse graph. Let's do what does this one actually look like?
That was the squared.
Okay, so I'm going to put in here radius squared. Why radius squared?
Because it's x. Your radius is your x.
Right. We think it's y equals x squared.
Yeah.
This is our x-axis, so I'm doing the x-axis squared. Just leave the numbers as they are?
No, we need to change them all again.
Why?
Because what we did before was 1 over x.
Right.
So now we need to square our radius.
Right. So what are we going to put in this one then? Equals.
So we have the equals again.
Yep.
And then
what does squared mean?
when you times them together, when you times it by itself.
Okay, so A2 times
A2.
A2 times A2. Right, and let's fill that down like we did before. And now let's plot these two against each other. Remember, because we're going to plot a new graph of the column that we've just made against y.
Okay.
To check if it's straighter. That's what linearising is.
Okay, so we're looking for a straight line.
Whoa!
That looks much straighter.
How does that look?
Yeah, much
That looks
better.
quite straight, doesn't it?
It does look straight.
So,
it's hard to tell because there's a big gap. Is there a way that you can see?
Well, that's true. You could get Excel to draw a best fit straight line, couldn't you?
That's a good idea.
How'd you do that? Right click on the points and then what?
Add trend line?
Yep. And what sort?
Linear.
Linear, because we're hoping it's straight line now. Cool. Right.
Exciting.
Can we just leave this graph as it is?
No, we definitely still have to put a title on.
Definitely need a title.
And you need your axis
Still need
labels.
the axis labels. And remember, they've changed now.
Okay.
Yeah?
So your x will now say radius squared.
Yeah.
Because that was what we plotted.
That's right.
Wow.
Okay. So it's not that hard, is it? Linearising sounds horrible.
It does.
But it's not too bad.
And it just means making a straight line.
Right. So, now that we've kind of done all those things,
yeah.
What sort of things did we review when we were drawing the graphs?
So how to plot the graphs, so
yeah.
highlighting your data,
yeah.
not to put the units in with the data,
yeah.
to put them in the heading columns.
Yeah.
How to label your axes
yeah.
as well. And then how to put formula into Excel.
Yeah. And what do we mean by linearising a graph, and why are we doing it?
Linearising means turning it into a straight line.
Why would you want to turn it into a straight line? What's wrong with just leaving it as it is?
Because we don't know what relationship it is.
Right.
So especially if it was an inverse, because sometimes it could look like inverse, but it could be inverse square. Yeah. So it's really...
What would you do then if you weren't sure which one?
You try it out.
You just guess one, or do you...
No, you try it out like we did. So we try it out, see if it fitted, if it became a straight line, and if it didn't.
And so that leads us on to how we linearised. So just briefly, what did we do there? We decided on what shape we had. Mm-hmm. Then we went back to Excel, and what did we do?
Then we changed the x coordinates.
Yeah.
By, squaring them in this case. So that
why did we square them in this case?
Because of the shape, because we knew it was the way it was curving, it was going to fit, it should fit.
Right. So we weren't sure that it was squared, but we thought, the shape kind of looks about right, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So we had a go, and it turned out nice and straight, and we thought, brilliant.
Yeah.
We weren't maths geniuses.
No.
But we got a straight line, so All good.
All good.
All right.
All good.
Awesome. Well done.
Thank
Good luck.
you.
Good luck with your linearising.
Thanks for your help. I feel much more confident now.